Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Mike's Night. Today, I have a review for you. Another movie review. For this movie review, I went to go see the movie Sinners with my mom. Sinners was a movie I wasn't planning on seeing originally. I mean, I haven't been going to movies or really been paying attention to Hollywood at all. For the most part, just a lot of movies that were coming out, they seemed just didn't catch my interest. And just poor timing, of course. But with Sinners, it's a little bit different. I, of course, at the same time, I wasn't again paying attention to what was actually happening in terms of Hollywood, but I kept hearing the movie title Sinners this, Sinners that, and what really got me interested in the movie was a friend of mine who, in terms of their opinion, I value greatly, and their taste is usually pretty good. So when they're saying, "Oh, this movie is so good, you have to watch it," um he was saying that if you don't watch it, no, you're not black. It's like, oh, okay, it's one of those. But no, he was joking. But for the most part, the movie, I actually quite enjoyed the movie. It was pretty good. From what people were saying, it's okay. Y'all need to relax a little bit, but the movie is still. I highly recommend watching something like this. It's for me. I'll give it a solid 8.5 out of 10. Um, there are some points that are like the concept in terms of like the topic of the movie. It's not like it's like a revolutionary kind of thing. But I do think that the production and what they were doing inside the movie was done very well. It definitely had good writing in some aspects, or good references to other cultures and things like that. Which in this movie, yes, is very important. It's very intuitive to part of the story, in terms of the culture that you stem from, or in this case, the time period that they are stemming from. Part of this, I do think, is both a historical movie and it definitely like a science fiction. In terms of how the characters are treated, and in terms of how the story is progressed throughout the entire like watch time, I do think it's at the very start. I felt like, okay, this could be kind of maybe it's like more of a historical thing, or maybe this is going to be talking about the roots of like African American culture. And part of that, yeah, it did delve into the roots. There was some terminology that was used that I didn't know. I had to look up. I believe it was Digot, which was referencing like it's not that actually, no, that's the wrong word. But essentially, they made a reference towards a type of musician that we are focusing on in the movie. So before we go on and actually talk about the movie itself, first off, obviously, this is a review. It's going to be spoilers in it. I'm gonna give you a brief summary, and then I'll go into the more nitty gritty details of what actually happens in this movie. But first, I do want to make a brief shout out to some of the stars in this show. Um, so number one is Ackerman Jones. He is a choreographer, and he was responsible. Well, if you don't know what a choreographer is, first off, it's a person who is in charge of figuring like dance moves or dancing fighting scenes, music, and like how instruments are being played. Are they dancing while they're playing the instruments, or do they have certain kind of clothing that allows them to move in the way that they're looking for? Essentially, yes, they are in charge of basically that, just movements done inside the movie. And Ackerman Jones has a pretty good portfolio in terms of what he's worked on before. He's been the main choreographer for things like Lovecraft Country, Dreamgirls, Pitch Slaps, Get On Up, Black Panther, and of course he's been in an assistant role for many other movies as well. So he has a pretty good portfolio of movies he's worked on before, and many of them are very impressive. His assistant was Amy Allen, who was also a very well known choreographer as well. Let me see. But she was in this movie more in charge of the dances that were happening. Let me see. Another person I want to shout out was Lindy Hoppers. Lindy Hoppers. Let me see. Oop, I'm sorry. Actually, I'm incorrect there. I went too far too fast. So this is actually a dance, not a person. Excuse me. Now, one of the main dances, which was also major for this time period, was called the Lindy Hop, or Lindy Hoppers, as it is called. Lindy Hopper was created in Harlem in the late 1930s through the 1940s. And it pulls from tap jazz, the Charleston, and the breakaway. This dance was gentrified and was, of course, it was stolen by the Caucasians who were not very happy that they are finding that African Americans are finding a place in the world for themselves. They're inventing stuff. They're finding new fun things to do. So they took it and they called it swing. So for any of you who really like swing in the past, or for you old heads, swing was actually invented technically by African Americans, but it was stolen and changed by the Caucasians who didn't like the fact that they were inventing things that looked fun. But I was moving too quickly, so we're not going to get into the dances quite yet. I do want to talk about the movie a little bit more, but since I've already mistakenly read it, I want to correct myself first. So, going on to the movie starts out, and so they're talking about the pre-war era. So I'm thinking World War One, World War Two. Considering the type of guns that they had, I would say it was around World War Two or getting close to that. I don't recall if they stated at the very beginning of the movie what year it was in, but they were in the Deep South. They were in. They started off with the main character driving up to a church. He was battle damaged, battle scarred, carrying a hilt of a guitar, and it's an old guitar. So the guitar had like a metal drum in the middle instead of the hollowed out section. So yes, this is an old fashioned guitar. It has its own very unique sound if you've never heard one before. It's not the same as the bass, not the bassy, but it's not the same as the wooden guitars that we have, none of the strictly wooden guitars. This one has more of a metallic sound to it. It's actually quite nice, but it's definitely a bit more. It's a bit different. But he walked into the church, and he's talking to his father, or in this case, the father, the pastor, and he was telling him to release his instrument. He was saying that it was a sinful thing that he played this instrument. And I will say it is very common, especially in the past, that anything that was deemed different or they were deemed it's not usual for people to do was often called demonic, and they were told to let that go. Music especially was a thing that was thought of as demonic for a very long time. Singing, playing instruments is allowing yourself to feel that kind of emotion. A lot of it was thought as sinful, so it was often treated that way as well. But Luffy heads off, and they're saying the day before, so yesterday in terms of the movie. And he's waking up. Of course, they're in the Deep South, so they're still picking cotton at this point. He's working in the field. He was getting up. He did his quota for the day, and he was going to pick up his guitar. And when he picked up his guitar, of course, he met with his father. His father was trying to talk him out of it, saying, "No, you should come back to church. What you're doing is very sinful." So he was trying to talk him out of course, playing the guitar. He still took it, and he met with his cousins. His cousins, in this case, one of them being Michael B. Jordan, being played by Michael B. Jordan, excuse me, where a duo who previously left that region that the main character is from. They lived there before, and they moved to Chicago. In this case, they moved to Chicago to try to make it more of a name for themselves. But in the movie, that they're very well known in their community for being a kind of like almost like a gang. They were like, they're the kind of people like, you do not mess with us whatsoever. You know who we are. We know what we're about, and we do not play with foolishness. So they're very active in terms of that. And they're trying to make a sort of like a club. At the time, it was sort of like a club for the people around the area. Of course, they were doing it for financial reasons, but yes, they're trying to make a club for that reason. The two cousins were actually buying out a barn that was being sold by a retailer earlier on in the movie. We'll get back to him pretty soon. But he, of course, he was being disrespectful to them for the entire time. He was extremely late for their meeting. When he met with them, he was very to the point, but he also spat at their feet for most of the movie, it was like a disgusting spit too. Like he put everything he had in that kind of spit. And they were trying to ask him, okay, what exactly is in this barn? Something's wrong with this barn. Can we like what was inside of here? And when he refused to speak, of course things escalated. But eventually they calmed down, they moved on, and they went to go pick up their cousin. They pick up their cousin. They go off in their separate ways. One of them. One of them went off to meet someone, to pay their respects to a previous family member, while the other was going out to recruit people for the club itself. So we're going to follow the duo that went out to go collect people. They went out to the train station, and the train station is still very active. And in this train station, they find a musician. Now, keep in mind the main character we're following is also a musician. He's very good at playing guitar, which leads back into a topic they talked about at the very beginning of the movie, which there are some people out there who have a strong talent for music. There's people who can play music. There's people who can connect people with using the music. They're thought of as spiritual leaders. And these spiritual leaders had the ability to connect you to your ancestors through the feeling of the music they were able to play, or it was so powerful that you could see your ancestors. You can connect it, feel like you can connect it in your past, present, and future. The main character was one of those people that he was able to play the guitar so well it draw crowds into, and they were able to like listen and feel every string that he was able to play. But this other musician, he's aged, so he has much more experience than the younger man who, in terms of his archetype, was like a youngster who was trying to find his way. He's trying to prove himself that he can make it out in this world using the thing that he loved to do, which in this point was making music. He wanted to leave the town that he was currently in because he was tired of picking cotton. He was tired of earning nothing. He wanted to do more with his life. And of course, they found a musician. They talked him in using booze, as per usual. It was like Irish wine or whatever they called it. So we're gonna move on for that. We're not gonna go too deep in the nitty gritty. There were some other scenes that were in there, but I recommend you go watching the movie if you want to know more about that. So they collect him. They move on. They collect someone else offside the street after assaulting his wife, or him and his wife, to be fair. But they collect him. They get him. They go on to the other brother who's currently trying to find people himself, but of course he had some familiars to walk into. And we're going to talk about that other brother real quick, the one played by Michael B. Jordan. So he went into town at one point. And he went into town. Of course, during this time period, things are still segregated. So there's a side of the town where only the only white people were going into the shops here. They were shopping. Everything looked a bit nicer. They had better quality items over there. And then there was this side of town which had mostly the African American people. Everything was a bit more rundown, but people were still getting their goods as they normally would. And on this side of town, there was a family there. The family who owns the shop, which this character played by Michael B. Jordan knew. And honestly, I never really thought about it, but at this point in time, they were a Chinese family. They owned a shop, and they were serving, of course, the African American people on their side of town. There was another shop that they also owned, which they served the white people as well. But honestly, I don't know why, but it threw me off guard for a little bit because I was like, wait, what time period is this? When I was in the theater, but no, it made sense. If it was after. It was around like one of the world wars. Again, I'm not too sure which one it was. I believe at one point in the movie they stated it was like they were talking about 1930 something. So I'm thinking it was it was getting close to like the Second World War. But essentially, yes, they were running the shops, and of course they already knew the character played by Michael B. Jordan. I cannot remember his name. I'm sorry, but it's been turned. But yes, they knew him, and of course they were serving him just fine. They were haggling, of course, to get their sign made. But but it is around the time when they were having a lot of immigrants come through the country. These immigrants often the ones like they were trying to make lives for themselves. They're trying to make new shops. They're building railroads. They're making roads. They were doing all sorts of things at this point in time. But essentially, yes, this family was a foreign family. They in the movie were Chinese, which is a major point that comes at some point later in the movie. It was not really a major point, but it's an interesting point, I will say, that comes up later in the movie. And then, of course, after all those scenes, there was a brief cut. This brief cut went to a random family out in just the woods, but there was a man getting chased by a tribe of Native Americans. Now, and keep in mind, in this time period, a lot of Native Americans had been kicked out of their native land, so they believed that none of them, there's no tribes around where they live, and they didn't believe that they should be anywhere near them. And of course, at this time, the Ku Klux Klan was also very active, very much active during this period of time. So this man who runs up into this random shack in the middle of nowhere runs into, of course, these two people who are ready to shoot him on sight. He talks them into letting him in the house, and the Indian tribe, Native American tribe, excuse me, pulls up and tries to say he needs to be dealt with. If you see, they're trying to get into the house to like make sure that he's dealt with, but they wouldn't let him in. Of course, they were being extremely racist, or they weren't trusting them because they were racist. They were part of the Ku Klux Klan. And because they decided to protect this random stranger, they ended up dying because this random stranger happens to be a type of spiritual demon in the movie, which we will also get to a bit later. So, of course, the demon kills them and he drains them of their blood. Which, by the fact that I drains them of the blood, you should kind of know what it is already. So we go back into with the main protagonist group. They went back. They congregate at this barn that they were at, and they start setting it up to be the club that they were looking for. They invited people off from all over, and people start coming in. So of course they inside the club they have like their stage where they sing, they play instruments, they're doing all those things. They have the bar. They have like southern food where they're cooking catfish, crayfish, crawdads, whatever they're called. They're cooking catfish and stuff like that. They have their restaurant basically. They have the bar, and the area where they're playing their card games, darts, whatever they have over there. So the two brothers, the twins that we'll call them, the twins, they made this place in order to make back some money that they proclaimed within a legal precedent. They stole it. Anyways, they were trying to make some of the money back. They were trying to make a fortune off where they were, but of course, the money they're getting was plantation money. So ultimately, it was basically worthless towards like any region outside from where they were. So they were trying to build this place for that reason, and also it brings up a part of like their main plan in terms of that. So the money that they took, they were trying to make a name for themselves again. So it's more of like a scheme than anything, but yes. And then one of the main characters, one of the twins, previous love interest shows up at the door. Now, keep in mind, this love interest, she comes off as white, and it's come up earlier in the movie, but she comes off as white. And at this point in time, even though it was still very much frowned upon, there were like interracial children. This lady was actually, as she comes off as white, she was actually a mix between white and black. Of course, it comes up a lot in this movie where the brother who had the romantic interest in this lady, he was trying to distance himself the entire movie from her. She was, even though, okay, maybe it was a little bit mean, but no, he was trying to distance himself the entire movie because, well, again, this was a very frowned upon thing for a black man and a white woman to have any kind of relationship whatsoever. And even though she was already mixed, the fact that she comes off as white automatically makes that kind of relationship very much frowned upon, and makes it dangerous for the both of them, especially for her, which a lot of time for a woman like that, they get killed, they get lynched, burned, whatever they did in the past. And this is a very common thing to happen. So he was trying to distance himself. He was trying to protect her. Of course, he could handle himself, but he was trying to protect her for as much as he possibly could. And this is Again, something that comes up, and also a little bit. We'll get back to that in a little bit. But the main thing I want to get to in terms of the story is they quiet everything down and they make the main character. He asks him to start playing his guitar. So once he starts playing his guitar, something very, very interesting happens. So in my opinion, just like the best part of the movie. When she starts playing, there's people who start showing up in the crowd. As she's playing, people are feeling the music. They start dancing to it. But then people from previous lives, their ancestors start appearing in the crowd themselves. Their ancestors, their future descendants, everything that that correlates with like their lineage starts appearing. And it's not just his lineage. It's lineage from the Chinese people. It's lineage from the other people in the crowd. There's lineage from many different parts of Africa. So I actually do want to talk about that a little bit. So we talked about it earlier with one of the dances, the Lindy Hop. What I said, Lindy Hop was made in Harlem. It was stolen and turned into swing, but that was a major dance during this time where it incorporated so many different things, so many mixtures of cultures to create something brand new and fun for them. Let me see. So the ancestors in the movie, this is a term, just more like the term I could remember earlier. They're called griot, excuse me, Griot, which is any of a class of musician entertainment of West African whose performances included tribal histories and genealogies. So in terms of the musician, this is exactly what the main character is. He's a griot, where he's of African descent, and his music was able to connect everyone's ancestry and their future descendants. And when he was playing it, people of multiple different kinds of cultures were coming together to play and to dance inside this group. Of course, they couldn't see their ancestors. Their ancestors are dead, or some of them are not even alive yet. But there are so many different cultures that started to appear inside of the dancing crowd. I do want to talk about some of them, and some of them I thought that's actually very interesting. So I'm gonna talk about the first answer that appeared. He was playing an instrument called a kalam, which is spelled Xalam. A kalam is more of like a very, very, very early version of a banjo. Essentially, it's like a very wooden instrument with the strings attached. The instrument itself kind of resembles a shovel, but essentially, yes, it's a very early version of a banjo. They said they may have been West African. Ancestor 2 was played by Amari Vagan. The second ancestor was East African. And let's see. And the scarves and markings that she had on her face were thought to be from the Awana tribe of Ethiopia. The style of dance that she was doing was called Akuli, which is also a South Sudan and a South Sudan style, and also in Uganda as well. The dance itself represents a very feminine energy, spirit, pride, and spiritual tribe and connection. There was another dance that came up a bit later. This one is a bit more in the future, about in the 70s. It's called B-Boy Kuso. I'm sorry, that's a person. B-Boy Kuso Fretch, who was the third ancestor. The dance that they were doing was breaking, not break dancing, specifically breaking. I'm all over the place with this. And this one was done created in the late 70s. It started in the Bronx and created by African Americans, Caribbean Americans, and Puerto Rican Americans. Specifically the youth. The youth, of course, at this point in time, they were underrepresented, oppressed. They were having a rough time, so they created a new dance between all the communities, which of course brought them together ultimately. There's quite a few other dancers. There's many different dancers from the past, the present, and there are some that had dances that I actually didn't know about. The references I have here, I actually got from a video I was watching, which was very informative, and that goes more into detail about the specific dancers, the people who played the dancers, the type of dances they did. and what region they're originating from. I will leave it. I'll actually leave it in the comment section of the video, not the comment section. I'll leave it in the description of the video or the episode itself, so you can go watch it yourself. I highly recommend you watch it because it's very informative. There is some things that I didn't even know. Like, for instance, of course, the Chinese dances. Since I'm not Chinese, I don't know too much about it. It's all that Chinese. The Chinese actually have a very interesting history and it's called history and mythology. So I'm always interested to learn more about it. But essentially, one of the dancers, the male dancer specifically, he was playing or dressed up as Sun Wukong from, of course, if you know Sun Wukong from the Journey of the West. He was doing a dance that was especially made for that kind of role. And when another female dancer who was doing another Chinese dance, I forgot the actual dance name, but she was dressed in a clothing style that resembles flowing water. There was another one that I was super interested in, the Zhou Li mask, which is more of a modern type of dance, type of dress and dance. That one was super interesting to me. I was really glad to hear more about that. And then there was another one, which I actually did not know, which was essentially it was twerking. They had one where twerking was a part of the actual dances that were being done. At first I thought I don't really think too much about twerking. I'm not too fond of it, or I don't really pay it too much attention. But apparently it was a dance that originated in Africa, which of course demonstrates feminine freedom and things of the sort. So I actually didn't know that. I thought twerking was originated, or not even originated, but it was the popularization of it was done here in America, and I do think some of it is done to an extent which I just don't agree with. But the fact that, yes, it originated in Africa, there's many different dances that incorporate that kind of movement in their normal dances. I actually didn't know that. So I was glad to learn more about that. And again, I'll link her video in the description so you can watch it as well, because it's very informative. And there's some of the things in there that I just didn't know. So I was glad to watch it and to learn more about that. But there was so many different ancestors that were popping up in the movie itself, and that was my favorite part of the movie, because there were so many different cultures, many different regions of Africa, China. Well, not many in China, but they showed the ancestors for everyone who was there. So there were the Chinese people there. There were China, Africa. Some of the, of course, are modern, so they are African American as well. There are some that were also Latin as well. But essentially, yes, there were so many different tribes that were coming through. And we're going back into the person who was found being chased by the Indian people. They were sitting outside. So I'm going to describe them now. That the movie calls them vampires. I guess we're talking about vampire. No, this is a vampire movie all of a sudden. But so this man walks up to the congregation, and he's standing outside. So if you don't know, in terms of old school vampires, there was a legend, of course, garlic, stake to the heart, blah blah blah. But there's also a thing that they do, which is they can't enter a building unless they are invited in. So they're just standing outside. They were trying to get in by playing. I'm gonna be honest. I don't know what in the holy hell they were trying to play, but essentially, they were trying to get in to play music, which was a front, because they were going in to try to kill everyone, and turn them into vampires to form like a new family. So they were denied, and of course they're being very suspicious. So the white, what's it called? Scarlett Johansson. Yeah. Anyway, Scarlett Johansson goes out. She's the white appearing lady who in the movie. So she goes out to try to see if they are good people, because they're trying to get in using gold, like literal like gold ingot, not gold ingots, but gold coins. So there's like, okay, clearly they have money. So they are trying to get them in so they can afford to keep the place open. So she goes out. Clearly she's creeped out by them, because they're talking in unison, they're talking in tongues, and they're just being very creepy. Started salivating at the thought of, drinking her blood. So of course, she tries to run away. She eventually gets turned. She tries to get back into the club. She was very upfront in terms of, she found a roundabout way to get in. And she gets in. Once they allow her in, then of course shenanigans start happening. So she tricks one of the brothers to uh, spend some quality time with her, and she eventually kills him and turns him after a short period of time. After that, they kick everyone out because there's been a murder on the scene. No one in the crowd knows this, but they kick everyone out to try to save face. And of course, when they let everyone out, that's when they start picking off all these different people one by one in the darkness. There was no screams, no fanfare, and they just started getting turned one by one, and then a huge congregation of them is now outside just waiting to be let in. Of course, they had to prepare themselves. They prepared themselves to fight. There was one scene in the movie that, I'm gonna be honest, in terms of the time period and the people who got originally got turned, this was a kind of a creepy thing. But I'm gonna be honest, the music that they were playing was kind of hard, though. I'm not gonna lie. It was like an Irish jig or something along those lines. But it was a really interesting song. It was I don't know what else to call it. It had that sound to it. Like when I say an Irish jig, I literally mean that. It had that kind of soundscape to it, where it's from that region or somewhere around there. Because essentially they're trying to imitate the music that they're playing inside the club itself. Essentially, the way that the griot works is, while yes, he can connect you to your ancestors due to the music that he plays, is the music that reaches your soul. Essentially, it's so appealing that it even attracts monsters of like vampiric origin. In this case, the demons that have been outside. His music, he plays so well. It connects the soul in such a way that even monsters want part of that. So specifically, they are targeting the musician. They want him because his music is so beautiful. It makes their souls like vibrate. It makes them feel better. It makes them. It's like a morale boost for them, essentially. But yes, they want him. So they get a huge like army of vampires, and they were trying to get in. They're preparing to essentially. They're trying everything they can think of to trick their way into the building. Before they realize, oh, what exactly is going on, one of the members of the Chinese family, they go out. The husband, in this case, they goes out so he can get the car so they can leave as fast as they possibly can. Of course, this is around the time where everyone else leaves and they start getting picked off. Unfortunately, he was also picked off in this case. And he tried to trick his way in by trying to appeal to the wife. And of course, this traumatizes her. She's freaking out. She's angry. She wants to, of course, kill the main vampire and avenge the father, but mainly to protect the daughter, because the daughter, while they are not there, is in town and very vulnerable in this case, which they never touched up on. They never went back to say show off the daughter again. She was like a one-time thing, and there was no like reconciliation saying, yes, your parents are gone. You're on your own now. There's no other family members, from what I know, and everyone else, of course, at the time, who possibly could have known her inside of that main circle was gone. So, in terms of that, don't know what's going on with that, and I don't think they didn't touch up on it ever again. But essentially, yes, she was fiending at the fact that her husband was gone, and they were talking about targeting the daughter as well. So she actually lets them in by screaming, "You can come in and come get it." She wanted to run the hands. And essentially, yeah, she endangers everyone and lets the vampires into the building. So essentially, yes, there was a huge fight. Everyone basically dies except for like two people, the main character and Michael B. Jordan. So they are the last two alive. They managed to kill the vampire, using sunlight, silver bullets, wooden stakes, and I believe that was it. But essentially, yes, everyone dies. When the sun comes up, all the vampires are dead. Except two. But we'll get back to those two later. And essentially, after everyone's dead, the main character and Michael B. Jordan, they connect, and they embrace each other. They survived a major ordeal. Everyone they loved and cared about is currently dead, except for the main character. His dad and, I believe, mother are still alive. But essentially, everyone else is gone. And they say their goodbyes. and the main character leaves to go back to the very beginning of the movie, which he drives up to the church to talk to his father and try to get comfort and what exactly just happened. And Michael B. Jordan stays. It's actually reviewed a bit earlier on in the movie that the person who sold them the barn size, the building itself, was actually a member of the Ku Klux Klan, a leader of the Ku Klux Klan, the sect in the region that they are in. And the original plan was to turn that club into a slaughterhouse. So they would kill everyone who went to the thing. So basically, they are talking about doing a genocide. And the people who lived in that shed earlier on in the movie as well, they were actually going to be there as well. They were the son and daughter, not the son. Well, they were connected to the that clan as well. So originally, they're the ones who actually informed them that this barn was actually going to be a slaughterhouse for them. So Michael B. Jordan stays. He has nothing left to lose. Everyone he loved is dead. Everyone he ever cared about is currently dead. No, and he has no more connections. He's on his own. So he decides to stay, and he was actually previously a soldier and in the World War. So he was stationed. He was stationed out in the woods, just waiting for them to show up and attempt to break in to kill everyone, not knowing that everyone is either already dead or no one else is there. So of course, the huge fight breaks out. He basically kills all the members who showed up there, including the leader. Of course, he takes a fatal shot to I believe what body part is that? The kidney, the liver. Essentially, he takes a fatal shot, and he finishes the job. But he eventually does die there at that barn as well, leaving no one else but the main character left alive. So, going back to the main character, yes, he reaches out to his father. His father is telling him to put the guitar down, stop doing what he's doing, to don't play music ever again. And of course, he's still young, and he had a dream that's what he wanted to do. He felt like he owed it to everyone who that day. Yeah, he wanted to play music. That's what he felt in his soul, to play music. So he left. He took the family car, and he left. He never looked back, never returned. And we actually go to a flash forward, excuse me. And he actually has his own club. He's playing in the club. He's using a metal electric guitar or a bass. I think it's an electric guitar. I actually don't know the difference between them really. But essentially, he has a new guitar. And he's playing in his club. He's well into his age now. He's an old man. He still has the battle scars from that night, but essentially, yes, he's playing there. He's enjoying himself. He's still playing music, and people are still in awe of the kind of music he plays, even if it's a different instrument. But yes, he's sitting down taking a drink, ending his day, about to close up shop. But some people show up at his door. And the people who show up are actually two vampires that are there tonight. The vampires were that white coming lady Scarlett Johansson and the other brother who was killed and turned into a vampire. Those two were the only two vampires to escape that night. And it's revealed there that the Michael B. Jordan told the brother, because he couldn't bring himself to kill his own brother again. He told him, "Don't go after the main character. Leave him be and let him live his life." They returned there to, catch back up, to showcase, we're still alive and we know that you're still alive. So we just want to talk. And they, just having a casual conversation, and it's revealed by the brother that, you realistically only have a few, not much longer left to live. So you're basically going to die. But before you die, just let me hear that song you played that night one more time. And it was a bit of more of like a flashback. So the guitar that he had was actually broken in the battle against the vampires, and he got it rebuilt. Rebuilt to be with the same. The hilt was exactly the same as it was before, but everything else about that guitar was brand spanking new. So he got it redone. He took very good care of it for all those years. He plays them a song, and the brother asks, you could live forever. We could continue playing more songs. You can keep living the dream that you want to live. But the main characters basically said, "No, I lived a long enough life. I'm kind of done. I've seen everything I want to see." and he respected his decision and they left peacefully. So the movie itself was very interesting in that regard. It was a new take on the whole vampire. And well, I wasn't expecting it to be a vampire movie at all, to be honest. But that was going to be something else about actual like the actual sins, because they're making a club, they're talking about bribing, they're kind of violent, and they're doing like sinful things, lust. There's a bunch of lust in the movie, lust, pride, greed, all those other things. I thought it was going to be something along those lines, but instead it was more about it's more of, again, it was a historical science fiction movie in the sense of, yeah, they talked about how all these cultures, well, wrongfully brought together. They were inevitably brought together. So they're here, they have the community, they have their ancestry. Then we have a character who's able to connect them using music back to their ancestry, back or going into or showing off, connecting them to their future selves. Now, I thought it was going to be something along those lines where it talks about the the culture, the community that can be built around, that was built around this time period. I thought it was going to be something like that, but instead it was completely different. And it's, even though the movie kind of went into that science fiction aspect, the fact that it was able to still make those comparisons, to make that connection, was still it's so super interesting, and it still showcased like relationships and thought processes throughout this time period. And this was in the Deep South, so yeah, this is more of a movie kind of talking about that, where it showcased what life was like in the Deep South, even during like during the period of the World Wars. Like there was still so much like racial tension even during then. And there was even a part in the movie where they showcased one of the major systems that were in place during this time, which I don't remember where exactly it is. I think it was in Georgia, or it was somewhere around that region, maybe like Alabama or something along those lines. But essentially, there was a system in place where they forced the prisoners of the region to do physical labor for them. So they're building the roads, they're fixing the plantation areas, they were doing the things along those lines. And of course, they were disproportionately African American people, because the system was created to oppress them. And that kind of ties back into like today, because a lot of the prison system is actually still using that system, where a lot of the criminals in the jails, the prisons, who are prosecuted now are still African Americans. They are primarily African American. It's not because that we commit more crimes, it's because the system is in place that we're over policed. A lot of the systems are in place to like what is the terminology? They're in place to put us down more often than not. There's so many systems that are still in place, and in the prison system, they still use free labor. The prisoners are still forced to do things for free. Technically, the prison systems, in some prison systems, depending where you are, is still slave labor. There was recently even an article or a news outlet talking about how there was a woman who still thought we were in the slave period. She worked in plantation for free. She picks like peanuts and cotton all the time. Not all the time, but she picked peanuts and cottons on this plantation. And she only recently found out in like the past year, 2 years, that, oh, African Americans have been quote unquote free for almost 200 years. No, not 200 years, but almost 100 years. And I still think that's crazy. That, yeah, even though this is a movie about the past, there are still so many connections in the movie that are talked about, that are done today, that still happen today. And this movie was, of course, there's mainly talking about the relationships and connections that were made back then. But there is so much of that movie that you can really, if you really like sit down and like dedicate like a day to learning about all the different like aspects of life, specifically African American life, and how we are treated in our own culture and now the American culture, society at that. Some of these haven't changed. A lot of these things are still happening. The KKK is still around. They may go by a different name, but they are still around. The prison system, while it changed a little bit, is still very prevalent and still acts the same way. the way that we're treated in our own communities is very much the same. And it hasn't changed. Well, it has changed. It's not. The aspects of the negative aspects are still very much present, and without a doubt, we are still connected very strongly by community and the fact that we can connect over so many different things. And specifically in this case, definitely music. Music is a driving force in our community, and it's one of our major things that we constantly put out and talk about in terms of what we love like about our people. Like of course rap, hip hop, and all and things of the sort. Of course, we often congregate around that, but there's so many different aspects of our culture that we don't actually talk about. For instance, of course, we know that we created jazz, we created blues, things of the sort, but we also pioneered in the rock industry as well. I'm pretty sure rock was basically created by African American people as well. I would recommend looking it up. Don't take my word for it, but I'm pretty sure I read an article stating that African Americans basically created rock as well. There's so many different musical avenues that we have actually had a major impact in, but more often than not, they're not as heavily valued. Even if we did create them, they're not as heavily valued because I think sometimes we get caught up in what's popular instead of what we actually have done or what's actually presently what's actually in our favor. But essentially, yeah, this movie was really good. Again, I would highly recommend anyone can watch it, but because of the ancestral messaging and some of the topics that are talked about, especially African Americans, I highly recommend you watch it because it does directly appeal to us. But it's still a very good movie, so I highly suggest anyone who's really interested to watch it. Again, I'll link the video I was talking about earlier in the description, so you can go watch it yourself and try to understand exactly all the different cultures, all the different aspects that were inside this movie. It's super interesting. This movie is super interesting for that reason because again, I'm very invested in the cultural like values and the way that we go about learning about culture, how we connect with each other, and different ways that how historically have we connected with other people. And in this case, yeah, there is historical overlap, and again, even though the movie technically isn't fully about that, it is still really interesting to learn about. So again, I recommend watching the movie, and I'm gonna end it here. So I probably will be back on another movie review in the future. I'm thinking of watching the Thunderbolts. And that one's, I don't know why all of a sudden, but I think that movie just caught my interest and I want to watch that one. But essentially, I probably will be back for that one if I do think it's worth my time. And essentially, yeah. So thank you for everyone for listening. Thank you for stopping by. I do wish y'all to have a good day. It's going to be a beautiful hot summer. If it's raining, God send, because I really want some rain right now. But yep, hug your dog, pet your cat. If you have a lizard, hey, welcome to the club, man. Get that little man a treat. If you have an amphibian, make sure he's moisturized, hydrated, flourishing. All right, got a plant? Well, let's sing a song, I guess. Well, but I'll see y'all later.